Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Arwynne O'Neill, and today I have a special guest, a friend of the family, and as previously described, super fan of the podcast, Bo.
Hi,
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is going to be an interesting episode. We are going to be doing a deep dive into the sign of Pisces, and we are going to be talking about the duality of the sign and basically just doing a sort of a free-ranging interview / conversation about all the different things that Pisces means in the world. And a bit about the 12th house, which is associated with Pisces, and probably a bit about Neptune and what have you. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited.
Definitely. Me too. I'm just going to start with, as we love to do, a little quote from Stephen Forrest, who has a wonderful book called The Inner Sky, The Dynamic New Astrology for Everyone. And this, of course, is new from like 1984. So
okay.
New astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah. He describes Pisces. And I just love to quote him because he has the most amazing way with words. And he's just kind of one of the OGs. But he describes the water sign. It's a mutable sign. It's the sign of the mystic, the dreamer, and the poet. And he says that the symbol is not about the fishes, but about the ocean. It's Mother Ocean, the realm of the undersea sierras, of luminous plankton and lost cities, the mother of life, the brooding symbol of all that is impenetrable, all that can be felt but never known, which is pretty great.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that he says about Pisces, which I find really fascinating as a Virgo and as someone who has nothing in Pisces, and this is probably the most foreign sign to me, like
Sure.
just I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I hardly know any Pisces people. And the reason that we're talking about this is because you have moon and rising in Pisces.
I do. Yeah.
And you really feel an affinity for this sign.
Venus.
And Venus.
And
right on the
Venus.
ascendant, which is delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here, Stephen Forrest says, where do we go if we let it go? If that question alone is enough to keep most of us clinging desperately to our circumstances and our fictions, furiously attempting to do the impossible, to create a safe, stable niche for ourselves on the roller coaster of existence, but not Pisces. Instinctively, the fishes are aware that personality is only a cork bobbing on a far vaster sea, the sea of consciousness. Whenever they feel the urge to take a deep breath and plunge into the territories submerged within the mind, for Pisces, the mind itself is a primary resource. It is the sign's refuge, its escape route from the insults and pressures of life, a fairyland, a world of wonder and peace, of endless fascination, a world that's always available. And then he talks about empathy and gentleness, and the fishes have an instinctive awareness of higher levels of consciousness from childhood. He talks about the shadow, and he talks about addiction and emptiness and Piscean sensitivity, and how escapism can be a trap, addictions to alcohol, to tranquilizers or hallucinogens. And the Piscean shadow is escapism, but he says in all its imagination and creativity, it can hide from the world, biding its time, turning away from every obstacle, waiting for fate to deal it that last bad hand. So There is a darkness to Pisces.
There's such a darkness to Pisces.
Yeah.
And, one of the most relatable things that you just quoted is that so much of my time is spent in a dreamland. And one of my favorite things to do is sleep. I can't wait to go to bed. I'm out immediately, unlike people who just stay like counting the clock, trying to force themselves to go to bed. Not me. 2 seconds, I'm out. And it's my favorite place to be.
Wow.
And I have some of the most like vivid dreams, the most indescribable dreams. And it's my absolute favorite place to be.
Fascinating.
And so, I mean, Moon, I would say, is largely pulling into those dreams. Yeah, it's the world that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And it's my favorite place to be.
Do you write down your dreams?
I used to.
Interesting.
I don't anymore because someone once upon a time read through that dream journal.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have context, it could be very easy to misconstrue, like, what does this dream mean, or attach a meaning to the person. And so now I don't really feel safe doing that.
Yeah.
Just in case like somebody ever looked at it, because some of them are weird, and you've got to work through that weirdness and figure out what it is. But
for sure.
Yeah. Just right off the bat, Dreamland is where we like to be.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a Pisces sun, but I do think a Pisces moon placement is a lot more comfortable than a Pisces sun placement.
Yeah.
And
I would say that. Especially, let's say, like, I mean, we've done actually an entire episode about your chart.
Yeah.
So you can go back and listen to that one if you like, as our listeners. But you are an Aquarius.
Yes.
So Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Pisces, and Rising in Pisces, and Venus.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have some other things in my chart that make me a little bit more combustible.
Yeah.
Than the average Piscean person. For instance, Jupiter is in Aries.
Yeah.
My Mars is in Sagittarius. I have a lot of things in Sagittarius. So I do not necessarily identify with all the passivity that gets labeled with Piscean people. However, I think sometimes they get mislabeled.
I think so.
Yeah. So when I think of Pisces, I think of everything evil in the world alongside everything good in the world.
Yeah.
And that energy existing in whatever relationship you have to Piscean energy, right?
Yeah.
So if every bad thing and every good thing that could ever exist, that energy is contained in wherever you have that in your chart, that's what those people or we are dealing with in that particular aspect of our chart. And so whenever you come across people, let's face it, Pisces gets a bad name,
It's
right?
true. Yeah.
Everyone loves to whip on Pisces.
Yeah.
But it's when you take a step back and think, well, from their perspective, they're seeing all the flaws with this plan, all the benefits of this plan, and they're locked usually in indecisivity, right? Because they don't know if the bad things outweigh the good things, nor do they care.
Yeah.
Like that's not really like what the energy is saying. The energy is saying like they both exist. Deal with it.
Yin yang.
You know,
the two fishes swimming in the opposite directions.
They're both part of the world, and you need to accept both, and they're both beautiful, and they're both terrifying. And so when you have all of that converging in a single human or a single part of a human, then like it's a really challenging thing to live with.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then trying to get other people to engage with that energy, one, it terrifies anyone who is not used to thinking like that.
Right.
But two, just the mere rejection of you as a human, right, comes into play immediately with your idea whenever you talk about your ideas or your creative outlets or whatever they are, because you have such the dynamic in view on the world. It's easy to challenge it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge the dark side or the, the ambiguity.
Right.
Most people want, well, what's the business plan? Like, what are the upsides? What's the ROI, Right. And there's not always a clear cut. Even as a Virgo, I can admit that readily.
Yeah. And I work in a field that is not astrology.
Yes.
And so my biggest asset is dreaming, right? So like, let's do the unthinkable, and let's come up with a way to actually make what we once thought was impossible possible. That's where I shine, and that's where Piscean energy shines, and that I give wholeheartedly to that Piscean energy, because people are predisposed to saying like, here's all the reasons why you can't.
Right.
Insert Pisces energy and says, well, you're right, but like here's step 3A, 4B, 6C, right? That help you overcome those hurdles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think Pisces, like second only to probably Capricorn, is the most enterprising sign.
Yeah.
Just on average that I've met. There are so many Pisceans who have started their own business that I just personally know, because we can only talk about our personal experience. There's no, statistical database, like sadly, where you can kind of, get the, and this, as a Virgo, of course I want that. Of course I want
that.
Yeah. Like what sign is the most prone to starting their own business?
Yeah.
But I have known a ton of Pisceans who, I don't know that many people, but I knew one Pisces who started her own shoe store, which I found hilarious because, it rules the feet. And she actually called it Shoe Fix, which is a play on addiction because we're addicted to shoes, which is hilarious. And her
very Piscean
avatar was the fish from Finding Nemo, which is hilarious as well.
And adorable. Exactly.
Very adorable. And one of the first Pisces who I've met who was very conscious of the reputation of Pisces. So, when you talk about astrology, you'd be like, oh, Pisces,
Yeah.
Just kind of knowing, like, okay, let it begin, you know.
Well, funny enough, people, sun sign is everything to most people, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just what we know. It's common language. It's commonly sourced,
Yeah.
right?
Which allows a lot of people to write it off, I
Yeah.
find, too, because if they don't associate themselves with those qualities,
Right.
they're like, that doesn't, it's not me.
Yeah.
But they don't know their whole rest of their chart could be the whole different thing.
Right.
Like they might not have anything else in Libra or whatever. And,
Yeah.
well,
So
that's
people
why
find out, oh, you're an Aquarian.
Yeah.
People love to examine Aquarians.
Yeah.
You know what? Like they're like, oh, how fascinating, how intriguing.
Right.
And they're like, what's your moon? Pisces. Oh. That's rough. What's your rising sign? Pisces. Oh.
That's
you know?
hilarious.
And sun sign people who are Pisces, that's what they get. What are you? I'm Pisces. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But moving on.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's talk about something else.
But I think a lot of that comes back to this like uncomfortable energy. I think we were talking earlier about how when we consider signs, we examine whether or not they're passive or active
Right.
or passive or for
Mutable,
word,
cardinal.
Yeah. But Piscean energy is one of the most passive energy, most aggressively passive energies.
Aggressively passive, yeah.
Yeah, in the zodiac. And it's not necessarily because, I don't feel, it's not necessarily because they want to mend to whatever company they're in.
Yeah.
It's because they're so damn adaptable. That energy has experienced everything. And to the point where it almost means nothing.
Right.
So there's not a huge drive to do one thing one way. Or when you like outline a certain scenario and you say, okay, do you want plan A or plan B? And they go, okay, I want plan A. And then the same scenario is outlined, but one detail has changed. And so they pick plan B. That's really frustrating for people because it looks like inconsistency.
Right.
It looks like passivity. But in reality, they know that one minute detail that you changed is going to change the outlook of the entire endeavor.
Yeah.
And it's better to go with B. And no one else seems to care.
Yeah.
So let me choose B, and then we'll go this way. And of course, they're only going to choose if they have something in their chart that gives them that permission.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's like politicians too. Like if they change their mind, they're oh, you're flip-flopping, you're wishy-washy, you're not consistent. Well, anyone who's consistent over a 20, 30, 40, 50-year career is not who I want to be running the world.
No,
anyone who hasn't changed their mind since the 70s, that's mental.
We need to evolve with the times.
And take all the factors into consideration and all the people who you're serving. And that is an interesting thing about Pisces, encompassing all of what's come before it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would sometimes think that the Piscean people that I know, which are actually not that many, but they're some of the strongest people I know.
Yeah.
Even though they kind of get this label as like weak-willed, weakly, fragile, all buzzwords that you hear associated with Pisces. Yeah. When it comes to looking at like how do those people cope with trauma, and you compare like someone with Pisces energy trying to cope with trauma to someone maybe with Earth energy, oh my gosh, that energy cannot cope with trauma, and so like you need help with that, even though it's supposed to be grounding, right? I find that Earth energy definitely has a harder time with that. Yeah,
it's a little more brittle. It's a little more wanting everything to be solid. Yeah. And earthquakes are,
Yeah. Well, in water, like, it just moves, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Fills up all the spaces.
Whoops. My leg fell off. I'm still here.
Swim,
I can still swim. Yeah.
I had a whole thing about the natural disasters that I associated with each of the signs a while ago. And I can't remember what they were, but it was something about, because we have a natural disaster for all of the elements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and dust storms and landslides and
very
quicksand.
Very interesting stuff. I similarly associated like examples of the elements tied to each sign. Totally. I probably have that near somewhere, but
in one of these notebooks.
One of these notebooks that I was surrounded by.
Totally.
Yeah, what an interesting way of and that's my favorite thing about astrology is once you start to like deep dive into some of this energy, I'm not so quick to label like whatever elements and planets and houses. I'm not so quick to say like that defines your personality, but it definitely helps someone else understand where the evolution of the energy that's expressing is coming out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like once you do that, you can start to relate to people a little bit better.
I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not like you're limiting them or defining them and
Right.
putting them in a box or a pie,
Right.
pie slice or whatever, like at the houses. It's a way of understanding different characteristics and different elements of life and different ways of exploring life options and patterns and things that gives you sort of a groundwork of talking about all these things.
Right.
And you can be, it's improvisational. It's like, yes, and, or the evolutionary astrologers who create these wonderful sort of tales that go from life to life and throughout all these different experiences. And, maybe it's all a metaphor, or maybe there is this magical synchronicity in the universe where it's a fractal and everything that we're experiencing is also illuminated somehow in the planets and the stars and the asteroids and who knows, but it works. Yeah. That's for me what, as a Virgo, I find so compelling about it, and why, even though, it's very hard to talk in the quote unquote real world about astrology without having people like roll their eyes or be like, oh, okay, I'm going to write you off as a flake or whatever. And as a Virgo, I do care about that, but it works for me. That's why I haven't just kind of gone, okay, fine. Like, I won't talk about this, because it is fascinating to me how much it actually works. Yeah. And how much it is capable of talking about personalities and relationships and the future and the past cycles of history and politics. It's fascinating to me, and way smarter people who have done a lot of studying, like Richard Tarnas, Cosmos and Psyche, one of my favorite books. He talks about all of the patterns of all these different wars and the outer planetary alignments that correspond with all of these major patterns, financial patterns of like depressions, and it's crazy. And if you can't read this book, even as like I would think a skeptic, without going, well, that's pretty compelling, right? You've done a good thing there. You've done something interesting. I don't know what you're doing, but it's interesting.
Well, and if you're dealing with Piscean energy, you don't have to choose. Yeah. Right.
It must be nice.
Yeah. There is no ultimatum when it comes to Piscean energy. It's just like, okay, this works for now. And then maybe in a little while I will read something else, Right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Very good point. One of the most interesting Piscean people I've met recently, I knew she was a Pisces immediately because she told me right away. Sure. And then proceeded to tell me, and it's her story to tell, but until I get her on the podcast, I'm just going to reveal a tiny bit about it, and hopefully that's okay. She moved to Vancouver about, several years ago, and worked in the downtown east side. Like, that was what she was attracted to immediately. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's the poorest neighborhood per capita in all of Canada. It's basically an open air drug market, and it's tragic and destitute. If you drive down East Hastings Street, you will just see block upon block upon block of people living kind of their worst life out in the open, and there's a lot of community help that's kind of pumped into that area, but it's not really making a dent. And the first thing that she did when she moved here was, I'm going to go work there. I'm going to help. I'm going to, that's what I want to do. I care about people. This is important. This is this, awful thing these people need our help. Right. And I can't remember how many years she gave of her life to it, but basically she got out before she self-destructed. She had a friend commit suicide on they had the same job, and she came into work one day and her friend had passed away and took her own life. There's a lot of addiction in the helping communities, the helping professions, people who cannot get through their day without some kind of alcohol or chemical crutch just to get through this, incredibly deep, intense, awful experience, being immersed in like what for most of us would be an absolute living nightmare. But yeah. And
so like you touched on a point there, right? So going back to like paint this picture of Pisces, right? That euphoria that you get out of all of this tragedy and that substance that's helping you. Yeah. That little piece of euphoria is what Piscean energy is. So like it helps explain why people are so terrified of it, right? Because like that euphoria amongst tragedy is the duality of Pisces.
Yeah.
You know, some people like I embrace it. I also work in a helping field, and I love it. It's like probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I've built my career around that, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And in some ways it makes you hard, or it makes you turn down paths that you wouldn't turn down. Like even like, let's skip over chemical abuse, right? Food.
Yeah.
Right. You work these 12, 18-hour shifts trying to help as many people as you can. And sometimes those people are not grateful for that help.
Right.
And they don't realize that you're sacrificing your sleep, you're sacrificing your health, you're sacrificing your ability to make food.
Yeah.
So you're reliant on fast food or candy bars or soda or whatever, just to sustain. And Piscean people do that really well.
Yeah.
They do that to the point where they often succumb to all sorts of addictions, but they also thrive in the middle land where I can do both. I can help with this tragedy. I can sacrifice part of my body and I will be fine.
Right.
And I don't think we give them enough credit for that.
Absolutely not.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, as a Virgo, it's admirable, it's terrifying, and it's so alien, but yet I think, the first thing I think is, thank God people like you, like that, like exist, because what would we do without people who wanted to be nurses and social workers and heroin addled musicians, some of my absolute favorites, Kurt Cobain, suicide, blah, blah, blah. But without that music, without someone who was willing to submerge in the dark side and maybe not come out of it, like life for me in my 20s would have been so much less rich, and that's just one tiny example. Yeah. And I think we all have examples of people like that whose lives and contributions we don't understand and can't immediately fathom how they do what they do on a day-to-day basis, but we are very grateful for them.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why we're talking about this energy is because like we need to protect them. We need to we recognize them and shout out to the underdogs of the zodiac who have experienced it all, right? Yeah. Or at least maybe not physically, but their energies certainly have. Yeah.
Whatever
guides,
that means.
Whatever. Insert your beliefs alongside astrology and interpret that as you will. But.
Yeah. And it's interesting too how many astrologers, like famous astrologers and really good ones who I respect, are Pisces. Yeah. Rob Bresney, Francis, there's insert, probably a dozen other names. Yeah. And
and then interestingly enough, in my bag of books that I dragged here,
you did.
There, oftentimes you'll hear anything that you read about Pisces. You will frequently hear, it takes on the characteristics of whatever it's dragging along, right? And I do find that interesting. I do find that to be true, as much as I hate to admit it. Right. It is true. It's like the lens that shadows over the Piscean energy. So if we just take this like unbelievably incontainable thought project that is Pisces energy, and then put a lens on it that's like personality, then you get what's actually showing through on the chart. Yeah. Right. To give an example of that, I have a Piscean Venus. Mm-hmm. And so Venus, all the things Venus, right? Right. But one of the weirdest little presentations in my day life is so my Venus is sextile to Neptune. Yeah. My Neptune is in Capricorn. What a weird thing, right? But I mean, generational. Lots of people have it. It's in the 11th house. My style, right, which would fall in Venus territory, is very Capricornian. Yeah. Totally. Very neutral, very classic. Yeah. I've seen you shop. You're very
expedient when you shop, but you know what you want. You want quality. You want like 3 different things in different colors that you know will fit properly.
Right.
And, if you've bought the same thing and you've worn it out, you'll go back to the same shop and buy another set.
The exact same thing. Yeah, it's very Capricornian.
Yeah.
And it's, or like you've been to my house.
Yeah.
Dark, moody colors, right? But just one color in each spot, right? Like it's...
Yeah, it's definitely not maximalist. No. Except with the pets.
Yeah.
You're definitely a pet maximalist.
Yeah, I don't know where that's expressing in my chart because I don't have anything in the 6th house. It's probably coming attached to my career in the 10th house.
Yeah.
Sagittarius energy there.
Yeah.
But I do have lots of pets.
Yeah.
I am a maximalist pet owner.
For sure. Yeah. There's the 12th house. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Anything in the 12th house?
Aquarius
Right.
and Mercury.
Yeah. Oh, Mercury.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's 12th house energy. It's not really connected to my Pisces stuff. So Aquarius in the 12th house.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. I don't know, did we talk about that Pisces governs the...
Pisces governs the 12th house.
12th
Let's just get that out there. Yeah. It's the native house of Pisces.
And so I have my little unaspected sun, or big unaspected sun, hanging out in that 12th house.
Yeah.
It's just kind of there.
Yeah, the sun and Mercury both.
Yeah. My Mercury is at least tied to my Pluto.
Oh, well.
And my Pluto is tied to my moon.
Yeah.
And so, like, get some energy convergence going in through there. Yeah, there's that. 12th house energy. I think, when I think of 12th house energy, I think beyond this world.
Yes.
Right? The other world.
Yeah.
So, circling back to maybe my Piscean energy a little bit, I have this innate weird sense thing.
Yeah.
Right? Which would normally, you would see indications of that in the 12th house, I would assume.
Yeah.
I don't think it's coming through my Aquarian or my Aquarian sun or Mercury energy. I think it's actually coming from my Neptune, which is, my Neptune is sextile my Venus, not really attached to my moon, I don't think. Maybe consult a better astrologer than me for that. When I think about like my experience, I have these false memories.
Interesting.
Some might consider a clairsense, right? But it's definitely Piscean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so when we were downstairs, when we had a drink, I have memories of not having a drink and coming straight up to the apartment. And what that pathway looks like.
Yeah.
And I have that for every single memory that I've ever had. And so it's like, okay, right now I'm writing in pencil. What would happen if I was writing in pen, and what life is attached to me writing in pen in this journal? Right. And so
there's like this fractal deja vu split memory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And when you look through the looking glass, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I need to go grab that memory.
Yeah.
They look different.
Yeah.
When you go to access them, it's almost like the fake ones are, or maybe fake's not even the right word. The ones not associated, are a little blurry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yet,
where another dimension branched off.
Right.
Yeah.
They're like a movie. You can hit play.
Right.
And they happen in a fraction of a second.
Have you seen Interstellar?
I have.
I love.
I
I'm
love
thinking of the bookcase scene.
Yeah.
Utterly, like, amazing.
Yeah.
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 Definitely some hallucinogenic influence there.
Absolutely.
No question.
Absolutely.
But the fact that resonates with people, the fact that, I mean, a whole generation of, my generation, not so much yours, but like grew up reading Marvel comics and being like,
sure.
oh yeah, multiverses, sure, multidimensional, all that's fine, just no big deal, and that's okay. Like,
right.
That's amazing.
Right.
That's just part of our collective consciousness now.
Yeah. It doesn't work to go as, it's not that it can't work, it's not as easy to access it going forward.
Yeah.
But if you take a step back,
because there's so many more options.
Right. So, but if you do take a step back and like go, okay, I want to do this thing, I can look at maybe 30 different options in the matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas someone would take, I don't know, what, hours pondering? I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't really speak to other people's experiences, but in a matter of seconds, I can see like the beginning pathways of going forward.
Interesting.
And that feels very Piscean to me.
Me too. And that feels the reason it feels very Piscean to me is because it feels the exact opposite of the way I like to think and plan.
Mhm.
And I don't even really like to plan that far ahead. I like to know what I'm doing right away, and
Okay.
I can be spontaneous, but it's not because I have all these, myriad options where I can kind of imagine doing each and every. That would kind of be overwhelming and terrifying to me. That's why I actually kind of like when other people are like, here's what we're doing. I'm like, awesome, cool.
Yeah.
If I don't like the idea, I won't do it, but
Sure.
I prefer it, actually.
Yeah.
Usually, if someone I trust and like their taste in things is just happy to kind of direct me to do the thing,
Yeah.
I would rather have that.
I can do either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's my Piscean energy that's like okay, we're going here now.
Yeah.
That's definitely my Jupiter in Aries.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that's
Fire signs,
by overwhelmingly prominent planet for me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I only have like Neptune in Sagittarius. It's the
Yeah.
only fire thing I have, which probably explains that.
yeah, quite a bit of fire in this chart. But
Yeah.
I mean, using the whole toolkit,
Right.
is something that I think I was put on this life to learn.
Interesting.
So like every aspect of my chart, I feel it.
Yeah.
It's not just like some like weird except for maybe the sun.
Yeah. In the 12th house.
In
yeah.
the 12th house.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the sun. But almost everything else I can see it, I can taste it, I can smell it. I know when to reach into my goodie bag and pull that out
Yeah.
to use it in this world or in my dream world. Like
That is a really wonderful, like the palette of experiences of the Pisces consciousness.
yeah,
That's a really great visual metaphor. I love that.
great.
Yeah. I think that might be a good place to end this one.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to the next time you come up because we're going to mine another topic.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a real joy.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining me. And thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you have anything that you would like to say about Pisces, or if you would like us to bring another sign back from the brink of defamation and you think that...
What are some other signs?
Oh, Capricorn.
Capricorn.
Probably.
I also have a weird love-hate relationship with Capricorn.
Yeah, don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah.
Taurus, I've heard too. Oh, that's a fire drill. So it's time to say goodbye. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.